Hello, friends. Happy Thursday. Hope your day is going great. Yes, let's dive right into it. So we are starting chapter 12 of the book Essential Truths of Christian Faith by R.C. Sproul. These chapters are short and sweet, literally like a page and a half at most. Some are a little longer and some are shorter, but average, most of them are only like a page and a half. So today we're going to be discussing the self-existence of God. Okay, and I was reading through this and there was a couple of sentences and a whole paragraph that I had to reread like 3 times for it to really sink into my mind as to what he was saying, because he talks about like now into like philosophy and stuff like that, and I'm not a huge fan of philosophy. I feel like it confuses me, to be quite honest with you. But R.C. Sproul does a really cool job at like making it very simple so that us, maybe me, slow people can get it. So it's better for me to explain it, because if I explain it, then I understand it more and it retains, I can retain it in my head longer. So let's do it. So again, the self-existence of God. All right, it says when the Bible declares that God is the creator of the universe, it indicates that God himself is not created. Okay, this is something that as a child, my parents would tell me, no. I'm like, well, who created God? No one created God. He just always was and always will be. And I'm like, what in the world? And that would like give me a headache. Like, I'm like, what does that even mean? But it's true, because it says, that God is the creator of the universe. If he's the creator of the universe, all right, it indicates that God himself is not created. All right, there is crucial distinction between the creator and the creation. Big difference. All right, the creation bears the stamp of the creator and witnesses his glory. So it's obviously his creation, his art, his his masterpiece that he put together, and it has like his stamp, his style, who he is. He's poured himself out into his creation. But there is a difference in the creation and the creator. Okay, the creation, like I said, bears the stamp of the creator and witnesses to his glory. But the creation is never to be worshipped. It is not supreme. Okay, the creator is the one who is to be worshipped. And you see even nowadays in so many religions that they worship, the God of the sun and the God of, I don't know, the moon, the God of the stars, the God of nature, the God of the trees, the God of the wind. And all of these things are creations that the creator was the one who did. So it's even a little bit of who he is, but it can't take away from the main focus, which is the creator. He was the one who formed it. He was the one who made it magnificent. Okay, it is impossible for something to create itself. All right, this is a contradiction, and we talked about contradictions. That not even God can explain or do contradictions, because they just don't make sense. All right, they can't be. So, for example, I can't say, let me see, I am a human and I'm also not a human. That doesn't make sense, right? Like it can't be. It's a contradiction. All right, so again, it is impossible for something to create itself. The concept of self-creation is a contradiction in terms, a nonsense statement. I asked the reader, and he's asking us, I asked the reader to pause and reflect a bit, which we just did now. It doesn't make sense, right? For the what am I saying? Okay, for the creator to have made himself. That doesn't make sense. We're going to explain why, okay? Nothing can be self-created, all right? Not even God can make himself. For God to create himself, he would have to be before he is. Even God cannot do that. You see, it doesn't make sense. Like he would have to be, meaning he would have to be God before he formed himself, and that doesn't make sense. Okay, then he goes on to say every effect must have a cause. Okay, so in order for effect to happen, something must have triggered it for it to occur, right? You have cause and you have an effect. All right, that is true by definition, but God is not an effect. Okay, so He wasn't like the byproduct of something, right? And we're gonna see why, because again, at this point I'm like, okay, I get this, but then how in the world is he here, and how in the world is he, how in the world is he? Okay, he has no beginning and therefore no antecedent cause. He is eternal. He always was or is. And again, these are things, guys, and when we get to heaven, we're gonna be like, God, explain this to us, because in our like little human minds, like, we don't get it. You always were, like, it's not something that we can relate to anything in this world, because everything has that we know of has a beginning and has an end, right? Let's see. Okay, he's eternal. He always was or is. He has within himself the power of being. He requires no assistance from outside source to continue to exist. This is what is meant by the idea of self-existence, all right? And that is what God is, that he has ultimate power to just be. Granted, it is a lofty and awesome concept. We know of nothing less quite like it. Again, we have no reference point to point us to. Okay, everything we perceive in our frame of reference, meaning in this world, is dependent and creaturely, meaning something, the making of something is dependent on something else. My children became, and were because of my husband and I. I was because of my parents. Trees grow because of seeds, because, other plants grow, and etc. Everything has, a source. Okay, we can't fully comprehend anything as self-existence. That's something outside this world that we cannot comprehend. But just because it is impossible by definition that a creature be self-existent, but just because it is impossible by definition that a creature be self-existent does not mean it is impossible for the creator to be self-existent. So Archie Sproul here is saying that it is impossible for the creature to be self-existent, but it is not impossible for the creator, who was the one who actually made the creation and took that step. It is not impossible for him to be self-existent. God, like us, cannot be self-created, okay? But God, unlike us, can be self-existent. So God cannot be self-created. We said that because he cannot be. He would have needed to be before he made himself, and that doesn't make sense. So for that reason, he is self-existent, okay? The concept of self-existence violates no law of reason, logic, or science. Yeah. It is rationally valid. It is a rationally valid notion. By contrast, the concept of self-creation violates the more basic law of reason, logic, and science. The law of non-contradiction. So self-creation breaks all those laws, but self-existence does not, okay? Self-existence is rational. Self-creation is irrational, okay? And he's going to go on into why self-existence is rational, even though we cannot fully understand it, even though for us it's like, what in the world? It's still rational, and he's going to say here that it's actually necessary, all right? The notion of something being self-existent is not only rationally possible, it is rationally necessary. Again, reason demands that if anything is, then something must be within itself, the power of being, okay? Otherwise, there would be nothing. Unless something existed in itself, nothing could possibly exist at all. So we needed a creator that was self-existent. Like, that is something that is necessary to even imagine our world and who we are and how it is that we were created. And that person is God himself, Yahweh, that he is self-existent. Perhaps the oldest and deepest questions of all is, why is there something rather than nothing? A necessary answer to at least part of this question is because God exists. We have something and not nothing because God is a self-existent God. God exists in himself eternally. He is the source and the fountainhead of all being. He alone has within himself the power of being, of existing. He alone, okay, my son just got up, I can hear him. All right. Paul declares our dependence upon the power of God's being for our own existence when he says, in him we live, move, and have our being. So we live, we exist, we move because he is self-existent, because he is our creator. If this doesn't blow your mind, folks, I don't know what. I don't know what will. And that is found in Acts 17:28. So that's that chapter. And that is crazy to even think. But I challenge you to think about it, pray about it, and say, wow, God, this is the God that I serve. That he doesn't need something to create him. He is self-existent. And now he's calling my name. All right, I'll hurry up and say the points because we're done with the chapter. So the points are, number one, every effect must have a cause. So that's why God is not an effect, meaning he's not created. 2, God is not an effect. He has no cause. 3, self-creation is an irrational concept, right? Because that means that you have to be before you make yourself, and that is a contradiction. Self-existent is a rational concept. All right, we talked about that. And self-existent is not only rationally possible, but rationally necessary. If you have to rehear all this, then go ahead and do it, because I had to read a couple of these chapters several times for them to sink into my head. And the sources, I always show you guys the sources of where I get all, or where R.C. Sproul got all of his information, and they're found right here. Psalms 92, John 1 through 5, Acts 17, 22 to 31, Colossians 1, 15 to 20, and Revelation 1 through 8, or 1:8. If you go through those, and you will see where it is that R.C. Sproul got all these concepts and was able to piece them together to figure out and to see that it was necessary for us to have a self-existing God. All right, guys, that's about it. Love you guys, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.